Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto anime review. This one's going to be for episode 90, which is called Mitsuki and Sekiei. And I thought this was overall a really good episode. We're obviously getting right towards the end of this arc, and for the most part this wrapped up I think most of the stuff with Mitsuki. I think they're still going to have a final end of arc type kind of moment with him and Boruto, where we finally get the, I suppose, proper resolution to this about, I suppose, what they both learned along the way, and I suppose what their dynamic is going to be like and how it changes going forward after this arc. Because if they don't really do that, then it kind of makes the whole arc a little bit kind of pointless, when that was the entire point that they were trying to make. As for what we got here, a lot of pretty eventful stuff going on, in that we saw the death of Kirara, we saw the death of Sekiei, and also the setup for Ku as being, the final end boss of this arc, with him stealing the Doctor's heart, which I think a lot of people predicted. It just kind of made too much sense that, in a way, this scientist guy doing what he did was causing all of this. He was always this sort of bad influence, in a way, on the village, so it sort of made sense to get rid of him in all of this, and that allows you to sort of kill off a character to give Ku a heart so he can fight as powerfully as he can in the final battle, which seems to be a setup of kind of a mix of Mitsuki, Boruto, and Sarada plus Onoki actually fighting him, which makes me wonder if Kurosuchi is going to get to really do anything in this arc. I think they'll probably have a final kind of moment of just... Onoki obviously is a very important character in this arc. They're going to have some sort of final development for him, and maybe he says something to Kurosuchi, and that kind of is, I suppose, him maybe fully stepping back from kind of any sort of leadership role within the village, or something along those lines. And will they kill off Onoki? I doubt it. And what exact way will the fight go? It sort of makes sense, particle style versus particle style, but who's going to land the final blow, I suppose, is the big question here. So in that sense, I think the last fight's going to be very, very interesting, and I'm very eager to see what they do. Let's, I suppose, cover the fight against Kirara, in that it was kind of a two-stage fight. She kind of combines all her Akuta into one giant Akuta golem, and then it's basically a little bit of Sarada versus Kirara, while Boruto summons Garaga to fight the giant Akuta golem. And the Sarada-Kirara fight is very simple. It's only a small section, basically. They lunge at each other, they both activate their powers, but this time Sarada actually puts her under a genjutsu, and it looks like Sarada's been killed, but that was the genjutsu, and she counters with a bunch of lightning balls, which basically finish the fight. And Kirara's death is actually pretty, dark, just because they really put a lot of detail, I suppose, into kind of highlighting how different she looked when she was kind of all cracked up, which sort of was fitting for the character who was always talking about pretty things, that she kind of ended up looking the worst when she was kind of defeated. They didn't really, with her, try to do anything along the lines of what they've done with basically all of the other fabrication characters, where they try to give them a sort of heroic death. I get you could sort of read into a little bit of what Sarada said, of just you tried to get all the prettiest things, but in the end, kind of you yourself weren't kind of pretty on the inside. You didn't have any of the... she was too focused on outward appearances and didn't realize I suppose, the truth behind being a human, which is not the things, it's kind of what's within you. But they didn't really apply that to her, and instead kind of just went with the idea that she had the wrong approach. So she had kind of one of the darker deaths, especially when she also got crushed by the boulder as well. The fight against the golem obviously was the kind of return of Garaga, which they needed to do. They absolutely needed to have Garaga return. Given that Mitsuki kind of turned back onto Boruto's side, they had to address the fact that was a key part of the arc a bunch of episodes ago, that Garaga, basically with his own master, went through something similar of experiencing betrayal. It seemed like Boruto experienced a betrayal, and he wanted to see if Boruto's faith in Mitsuki would turn out to be true, and it was. And we see that here with obviously Garaga still not I suppose, admitting or kind of really changing all that much, but just his actions kind of speaking louder than his words, and him deciding to fight for Boruto, because obviously he was proven correct, and in a way just wanting to finish a fight, have a fight where he trusts a human, and together they win a big battle, and that's what happened here. It wasn't anything too fancy. There was a little bit of action, Garga kind of whipping the golem with his tail, then constricting it. For a second you thought Garga was going to get like ripped in half, which would have been crazy to show, but that's where Boruto steps in to sort of distract the golem, and then the constriction works and he just shatters the whole golem, and that's for the most part the end of that section. But I think the core of the episode, as the title said, was Mitsuki versus Sekiei. And I overall liked how they did this, in that the actual fight that they had was more of Sekiei getting angry, attacking Mitsuki dodging, using kind of clones to take hits, and him just talking to Sekiei. The actual fight section was only a very, very small bit, kind of like the Kirara fight. It only ended up being pretty much a lunge at each other, aftermath of the sequence type thing. But I liked the whole idea of Mitsuki not wanting to fight Sekiei because he is his friend, and wanting to try and help him and find some way to save and protect him, and eventually being forced into the fight. And I like the emotion that they showed on Mitsuki's face, that this is kind of really showing him as a character, that even though I felt like they maybe could have got away with having Mitsuki just overall, I think, be more emotional, but I think they showed it more with the animation on his face of how hurt he was by the fact that he had to fight his friend, that this was the only way to do it. This is the whole, I suppose, Naruto Sasuke thing of just, having to fight even though fundamentally Naruto wants to be Sasuke's friend. It's a kind of similar type thing here, not as developed as much, but you get the effect, because I thought they actually did Mitsuki Sekiei as a relationship fairly well, so you understand the betrayal from Sekiei, but also that Mitsuki, you get why he does also want to help him. And in the end, it's just a relatively easy victory for Mitsuki, because he focuses on lightning style, and that completely counters the earth style explosive clay. As powerful as that jutsu is, Mitsuki has a perfect counter to it, and that's why he ends up winning the fight. And it is a kind of tragic one. They try to really make Sekiei's death like super emotional, and I think for the most part it works. I think perhaps some of the dialogue could have been just a little bit better. You could tell, I think you could sort of tell that this was a sort of tricky section to write for them, in terms of how do they wrap up everything that's come along in a 2 or 3 minute segment of just Mitsuki and Sekiei talking. I think they did. They had a really good attempt at it, and it worked for the most part. I don't think it was bad really in any way. I just think like there was definitely potential for it to be better than it actually was. In that when they really get down to it, it is the fact that Sekiei gets upset that so he sort of realizes in a way his mistake was that like he realized a little too late that strength comes from protecting friends, and he tried to kind of do that by protecting the other fabrications, and he also did see Mitsuki as a true friend in the end, and him just accepting that okay, Mitsuki was ultimately trying to help me, went for the fist bump. And the sort of tragic aspect here is that Mitsuki's just a little too late, and as he goes to fist bump Sekiei, his hand kind of crumbles apart, and it's this very, very tragic kind of end for the character. And just for Mitsuki himself, like not wanting it to sort of end like that, but it being forced into being that way, because ultimately he did this to try and judge whether or not the fabrications were a threat to the Leaf Village, and he made the decision that Ku is going in the wrong direction and he is a threat, so he has to oppose them and side with Boruto. And I also like that Sekiei mentioned Boruto a lot, that there was a sense of kind of almost jealousy there of just like, oh, I'm not your best friend, I'm not as good as Boruto, I'll get you to fight me by saying I'll kill him. So I think they managed to do that pretty well for the most part. I think it lacked like the strength, I think, of the writing in some of the other more emotional parts of Boruto and also original Naruto. It felt a lot like the way they've tried to wrap up some of the more emotional arcs in some of these other arcs that aren't necessarily part of the manga, where it's like, okay, here's this thing with like Chocho, and then they don't wrap it up in the best way. But this was it was okay. It was all right. I'm not gonna say it was like one of the best or one of the most emotional parts of Naruto ever, but it was solid and it worked. And I think this arc is ultimately worth the amount of episodes it was, even if it was very kind of meandering along the way. Other than that, we do see a little bit of Kuretsuchi and the other Stone Village shinobi fighting out on the streets, and Kuretsuchi's about to kind of jump into action again. So that's kind of what makes me wonder, is she going to get involved in the fight with Ku? I'd like that to be the case, because I'd like to see Kuretsuchi get a big fight. Konohamaru, similarly, like I'd like to see something with him. I'm assuming that towards the end of next week's episode, he'll probably meet up with his team. Whether or not they get a full-on fight, I'm not entirely sure. Or will it maybe be a case where Ku with a heart is now so powerful that they need like Onoki, Kuretsuchi, all of Boruto's team, and Konohamaru to fight Ku to actually take him out. I'm not really sure what way they'll go with that, but there's a couple of things they still need to come back to. Similarly, Onoki was met by Seki. This is the kind of small plot of like Akatsuchi sending Seki to get Onoki, and Onoki deciding that no, he has to have a role in the end of this, because it was his kind of mistake that led to all of this. He has to be there to sort of end it. So the next episode, I think, being called Onoki's Will. Obviously there's going to be some interesting dialogue from Onoki in the next episode, and I'm interested to see what his takeaway from all of this is, given how, ultimately he did this to try and basically make it so that the tragedy that happened with his grandson doesn't happen to anyone else. So we'll see what the takeaway from all of that is. And then we end with the idea that, of course, Ku has got the heart from the doctor, and he seems ready to fight to, I suppose, protect his life, basically, and he's going to do anything. He's on his own now, basically. There's a few Akutas still out there, but for the most part, the Akuta production has been shut down. It's just Ku on his own, but Ku is super, super powerful because he has particle style, and now there's no real risk of him kind of like overloading on energy or something like that, beginning to crack, because he has the heart. So I am interested to see just how powerful they show particle style in the next episode, because they've always tended to just do the cube technique, the atomic dismantling jutsu, and it just be that one big cube. I'd like to see maybe some different kind of moves as part of a particle style. But I think this arc has kind of come around, and it's come to I think a really solid end. The things I still want, of course, are, I think there needs to be a really, really good resolution with Onoki, and then I suppose Mitsuki's explanation to everyone, I think, by the end of this, of just the whole, we'll hear what you have to say later on when we wrap up everything, that has to be really well done with regards to, I suppose, Mitsuki. This whole arc has been about Mitsuki's will, and him, I suppose, realizing what his will actually is, and the explanation for that does need to be good to justify why this arc happened in the first place. So that's my thoughts on the episode. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were, but that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.